November Technovate event, Entrepreneur or Small Business Owner, Which One Are You? With Dr. Ed Vengrouskie. Once again, my name is Joya Scarletta, and I am part of the digital marketing team here at InterraIT. For those who've never attended a Technovate session before, welcome. And I just wanted to give a brief overview of what it entails. We started Technovate back in April, roundabout, and our intent is to invite speakers from different backgrounds to discuss and talk about relevant and timely topics. So ranging from upcoming technology trends to leadership to management and strategy. Today's session will actually be the last one for this year, but don't fret, we'll be back in 2022 better than ever. So I appreciate everyone being here. And as always, please be on the lookout on our website and on our social media channels for our upcoming events. Before we get started, I just wanted to cover some basic housekeeping rules. Please do not forget to put yourself on mute, and please hold off. Oh, sorry. We will have a Q&A session at the end. So if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can private message me, and I'll do my best to get to them all. With that being said, I am extremely thrilled to introduce today's topic and speaker. For those who might not know me, or who may know me actually, I completed my MBA in 2020. And I have to say that one of my favorite topics in the program was entrepreneurship and what it takes to be one. So this talk will take it one step further by looking at entrepreneurship and also looking at the differences between small business owners and entrepreneurs, as over the past few years, these two terms have been used interchangeably. So I will let our speaker talk about this and more. I am absolutely honored to introduce Dr. Ed Vengrouskie, who was actually one of my former professors, and I'm happy to say he's a great mentor of mine. His portfolio consists of over 40 years of senior management and business development, as well as leadership in public, private, and governmental organizations. Dr. Vengrouskie has over 10 years of experience working in the Middle East as a senior program director working for Boeing. After retiring from the corporate life, he has continued his passion for small businesses and entrepreneurship through undergraduate and graduate teaching. He is currently a business and entrepreneurship instructor at Fort Hays State University, located at Hays, Kansas. On to you, Dr. Vengrouskie.
Well, Joy, thank you so much. I am absolutely honored to be with you and your colleagues. And I see some of my colleagues from another institution that I work for on the call, so welcome. And I see many of you are international. My heart is really an international business development director. So thank you for coming. Thank you for attending. In terms of why the topic now, what we have seen really as COVID has taken hold of our economies, has upset our business acumen, have looked at so many changes that have occurred. What we're now seeing, like we've never seen before, is an increase in the number of startup entrepreneurs and small business owners. Many of you in the tech area, of course, you are in a market where entrepreneurship is highly respected. And probably some of you have thought about, okay, is it time for me to take the lunge into being an entrepreneur or a small business owner? So today I'm going to look at those two areas, going to share with you my thoughts and really focus on what I am seeing as an educator, a researcher, and a professor in these areas, and why all of a sudden we're seeing this big influx of interest in those two.
That sounds great. And also, I was just wondering, besides your passion, will you be sharing your thoughts on the differences between small business owners and entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. I have been both. Once I left corporate America, I was a small business owner. And at the time, the term entrepreneurship was just people were trying to figure it out. And I share the story that in one research project that I was looking at back in the day, the researcher was trying to determine what were the characteristics of entrepreneurship. And all of a sudden, he was trying to determine that all left-handed people were entrepreneurs. So that was something that even in the early days, we were trying to struggle with. How do we define this entrepreneur thing or this entrepreneur individual? Things have come a long way. But yeah, let's take a look at some of the things that I have to share with you for today. Now, what I'd like to start off with, and we'll start with small business. If I could ask you just to think in your mind a definition or a perception of a small business, and keep it to about 3 or 4 words. And I think that would really get us moving in the right direction. So when you think of the word small business, what is it what really comes to mind? Okay. And then again, that will kind of set the tone for where we're going to go here. Now, when we look at a definition of small business, and of course, I'm using definitions that are coming from the Small Business Administration in the United States. And they start by defining a small business as a organization or business that has less than 500 people. Well, if your perception of a small business was a mom and pop, then all of a sudden you're like, my gosh, there is so much bandwidth between 2-person owning a bakery and this 500 limit. But that's one of the challenges that the small business arenas have really had over the years. And what the Small Business Administration has also done is they have changed this number from 500 to other numbers depending on the industry. For example, if you're looking at the transportation industry, their numbers for that qualification for small business is about 1,500. So again, you have to ask the question, where does the small business really fit? If it's one that many of us claim that we understand, it's very small, family owned, a small tech startup, maybe a bakery, a beauty salon. And of course, now we're looking at very small numbers. But that's where the bulk of those small businesses rest in the United States. The current figure is somewhere around 31 million small businesses that are operating in the United States. 31 million. Now that number changes constantly. It went up, it went down because of COVID. But when you really look at the impact that small business is making to economies, not only in the United States, but globally. And in some countries, that number is significant because as economies have been shaken by COVID, the challenges with supply chain, the challenges that many of us have seen with the organization in itself. And I also teach organizational behavior and development. And I will tell you, COVID has put us in a situation where we need to rewrite the book on organizations. And this has just trickled down into the small business and the entrepreneurship, okay? So And then within those small businesses, we break it down even further. We still have more men than women that own small businesses, but that gap is starting to narrow quite a bit. Somewhere, the last count was about 50% men, about 32% women. And then you break it down even further into African-American small businesses that are significantly growing, especially in cities that are considered to be entrepreneurship cities like Atlanta and Austin. And then we see an increase now in Latino small businesses. That's very popular where I'm located outside of Austin, and especially in the food industry. I've had the pleasure of coaching, mentoring several food truck startups owned by Latinos. And I will tell you, that is a big, big business here. And if you really want to study small business ownership and dynamics, that would be a market to study. It would be, and also Asian Americans. We're seeing a large increase in that population of small businesses. So just to give you kind of a perspective of where small businesses are today in terms of the numbers and the dynamics that are going on. This kind of captures some of that in a different slide. When we see types of small businesses that when you say non-employee, that means there's only one, that is the owner. Look at the number, 23 million. And that figure was as of last year. Sole proprietorship. Then we go into what is considered to be Main Street. These are local businesses that are really offering a service and value to their customer. And we see a tremendous number of these types of businesses in our community, and we call them the service industry. And here's where the bakers, here's where the small beauticians, the nail salons, we're just seeing this growth in these areas, especially in small towns where the shopping centers have moved out from the center of town, and the city commissioners and the planners trying to keep downtown alive. And this is the way that the economy is continuing to thrive in small communities where there is a demand for small businesses providing that value to their customer. And then you can look at suppliers. These are business to business type. And then you move down into the high growth area. And here is where you normally find your entrepreneurs. Now, interesting here is that just about every entrepreneur that has a great story to tell, the Jeff Bezos of the world, the Elon Musk of the world, the Richard Bransons, the Oprah Winfreys, the list goes on and on. All of them started as a small business owner. So there's the foundation, but what makes some go in one direction and some stay very comfortable with being a one person or a small organization? So I want to share some of my thoughts with you regarding that topic. Looking at the characteristics, now these are very generic, and I'm not saying they're all inclusive, but some to really consider. When you look at a small business owner, their purpose is to generate a profit. And like I've shared with you, the profit comes from products or services that make a difference to their customer, where that customer comes back because they have been given a great service, a product at a great price. So repeat customers are quite necessary for the success of small business. So now you have that personal touch of keeping the customer very happy, okay? And as I've shared with you, many small businesses are owned or controlled by an individual or a small group, okay? And when you look at type of ownership, when you see small businesses, they are usually sole proprietorship or partnership. Now, some that grow a little bit more and are selling products, you may see LLC in there, but majority of them start as sole proprietors or partnerships and pretty comfortable with that type of ownership. In terms of growth, and this comes from studies and discussions, that small businesses are satisfied with slow growth, some of them, and depending on the mindset of the small business owner or ownership, they kind of shy away from explosive growth because that puts them in an area of uncertainty. Again, the small business owner is very interested in making a profit, paying the bills, and growing the business, but at a slow pace generally, okay? Generally, small businesses, they won't shy away from risk, but when they do accept risk, it's at a very calculated type of analysis. A lot of what ifs, okay? Now, and again, what you'll see is that the small business owners, many of them from a financial side, focus in on projecting revenues and calculating profit margins, okay? Now, as I went through some of that, of course, some of you that maybe are entrepreneurs say, well, some of those are pretty common. And yes, they are. But again, when we try to distinguish one from the other, these are some of the areas that we really find ourselves discussing, and research has supported that, okay? Now, let's go into entrepreneur. Again, I would like to ask you just to think about what comes to mind when you hear the word entrepreneur. And again, maybe try to keep that to 3 or 4 words. And that really narrows your focus into entrepreneur or entrepreneurship, okay? Now, when we look at definitions of entrepreneurs, we have seen that to change a little bit over the years. Where before, why there was such a confusion between small business and entrepreneur is that in the beginning, and really up until a couple of years ago, the definitions were pretty close to the same. Entrepreneur started their business. They were looking for profit. But now, when you look at a definition for entrepreneur, you'll find the words innovation, creativity, scaling for profit, managing risk and rewards. And those now become what we call the cornerstone of the entrepreneurial mindset. And those really start separating in the difference between a small business owner and an entrepreneur in terms of what they're looking for this particular product or service to do. Okay. Now, why the craze? We have really become a society that just about everything has to be entrepreneurial. You know, I went through and I looked at phrases that I really had to look some of these up. Of course, we know intrapreneur are individuals that work within large organizations that practice entrepreneurial skills, okay? Pretty standard. Then we have serial entrepreneurs, those individuals that start up businesses, they sell. They start up another business, they sell. So their whole profit is to scale it, sell it, and start over. Then social entrepreneurs, and I'll talk about those in a minute. And then we have technopreneurs. I mean, and the list goes on and on and on. So if you're looking for some entertainment sometime, just go in and type in different types of entrepreneurs, and the list just goes on. Now, why have we gotten to that point? I think that as a society as a whole, as time has gone on, entrepreneur and entrepreneurship has given us this dream of changing careers, making a lot of money. And again, if you want some entertainment, go to YouTube and put in entrepreneurs and see what pops up. Of course, it's one exciting video after another that I am now making 7 digits and I own 5 businesses and I'm 22 years old. Okay, but the next one is just a repeat over and over. So we tend to look at, without a lot of understanding, that entrepreneurship is a quick way to get rich, okay? Things such as Shark Tank has helped us a lot to keep that alive. You know, we see different entrepreneurs every week. We see a group of hosts that have done very, very well. But then we're also want to be like Richard Branson, or we want to be like Elon Musk, or Mark Zuckerberg, or Jeff Bezos, or Oprah Winfrey, or even my friend Jimmy Buffett has a story about entrepreneurship that is phenomenal. Okay, these individuals who have started businesses that have failed, and they failed over and over again. I remember when I started my doctoral work back quite a few years ago, Amazon was a book distributor. And you could go in and buy books. You could order books, textbooks, or books that you wanted to read. Richard Branson, his first attempt was selling 33 1/3 records in downtown London, because he was at a time when all of the London music was a craze, right? As the time the Beatles were exploding, and the business failed miserably. But he went on to learn from the failures. So that's another dynamic about entrepreneurship, is that they learn from their failures. Where a small business owner, normally it is catastrophic. They fail and everything, it just becomes a mental block to start over again. So again, the mindset of the entrepreneur is really something that distinguishes the two. I will tell you, even locally, I'll share with you, I'm about 30 miles north of Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas is considered to be an entrepreneurship city. My goodness, what does that mean? The city fathers and the commissioners, in an effort to attract young people, young graduates, people from all over the world to come and work in the high-tech companies that we have here. Austin, when we got here, was a sleeper little community of about 500,000. Well over 1.2 million now, with companies such as Google, Amazon, Oracle. Elon Musk has relocated his corporate headquarters to Austin, and he is building a massive facility. I've never seen a facility this large. And I came out of the large aircraft industry. This thing is phenomenal. And he will house his new robotic production facility for his vehicles. He will do R&D research on new forms of solar panels. And his space program will be headquartered, even though he has his rocket launch facility in Boca Rica, Texas, which is about 40 miles east of Brownsville, out in the middle of nowhere. And again, Jeff Bezos is following very closely with his rocket launch facility north of Van Horn, Texas, about 30 miles, which is out in the middle of nowhere. So we're getting notorieties here with these outstanding big interests. And of course, when you have people like Elon Musk here, and we just landed a very large facility from Samsung. They will be building a $19 million chip industry that will support our infrastructure in Austin, Texas. And of course, the school, University of Texas, has a very strong entrepreneurship program. We have a lot of angel investors here, and we have a very large startup incubator here. So that becomes the foundation of these entrepreneurship cities, okay? So we've talked a little bit about entrepreneur, and this was a slide that I thought was pretty interesting. We base it on business type, okay? You can see trading, manufacturing, that base it on technology. We do it on ownership. We can do it on gender, and we do it on size. And then over here on the right side, we see something that may be of interest to you. This individual was an economist who got interested in entrepreneurship, and he classified entrepreneurs from the agricultural side. So you see terms like Fabian and drone, and you think, what is he talking about? But those are just interesting terms that he, as an economist from the ag side, wanted to get in and help us with our types of entrepreneurship. So again, a lot of different types as they fall out under industry or ownership. Now, looking at the entrepreneur from a standpoint of their passion. If you've been around entrepreneurs, they're very, very passionate. They are consumed with their idea. Their objective is to innovate. And again, I have seen a change in really the purpose of entrepreneurs since COVID. Prior to COVID, a lot of the focus was on profitability, scaling the business. But since COVID, we have seen this social entrepreneurship growth. And it comes from a different type of mindset. It comes from a mindset that is prominent in individuals from about age 21 to mid to late 30s. And it's one of helping society. COVID, as all of you know, has impacted many countries, companies, individuals. And with this impact has surfaced out of the darkness, the social entrepreneur that is looking to help society. We have seen a tremendous number of these nonprofit social entrepreneurs that are helping people who've lost their job, feeding the hungry, going even further and educating those that have been left behind. Those that have lost individuals to COVID, those that are, we would say, society has kind of forgotten, or they've gone upon hard times in terms of jobs. I have seen a number of these social entrepreneurs that are now into mental health that are focusing in on grief management of families that have lost 1, 2, 3, 4 members to the crisis that we have experienced, okay? So again, we're seeing this rise in what I call the spirit of the social good. Not to say that there are entrepreneurs out there continuing to scale for profit, but again, we have seen such a number of new social entrepreneurs in our particular area, and I'm sure that many of you are aware of those, okay? And again, when you look at entrepreneurs, not only from what I would call a true entrepreneur, but from a social entrepreneur, their focus is all about change, okay? So again, some of the things that are occurring and from a business standpoint, COVID impacted us as an external environment that we had no control over, and just shattered many organizations. And we're seeing that when we're seeing how organizations have reacted to people working remotely, and really the workforce saying, you know what, I'm not going to work for you anymore. I'm changing jobs, or I'm quitting. I was just astonished at the number of individuals that went, you know what, COVID has given me an opportunity to reprioritize my life. And I'm not doing the 9 to 5 anymore. I'm going to do something else. So that's also driven the spirit of small business and entrepreneurship. And again, I talked a little bit about the mindset, the entrepreneurial mindset, and that comes from specific beliefs that some say that are inherent, some say that can be taught, but those are things such as behaviors like taking ownership, self-direction, being highly resilient, solution-oriented, critical thinker, and knowing how to create value. Now, as we've kind of gone through this, I'd like to throw these up at you as kind of a highlight or some lighthearted thought. You might be an entrepreneur if the idea of failure, of failing at your business, doesn't scare you very much, okay? If you use social media to market your business and you do it yourself, okay? You guys are masters of social media, okay? And again, for an entrepreneur, they use that platform very, very well. You tend to have problem delegating. You want to be in control, okay? And maybe you have started more than one business successfully or not, okay? That's just, again, something to think about. Now, from a small business owner, you may be a member of the Chamber of Commerce. And for our international audience, Chamber of Commerce are local governmental agencies that help small businesses. They become the foundation to where if you join the business or you join the chamber, you have networking opportunities. I have pro bono several times with the local Chamber of Commerce, and they give free seminars on startup and types of business ownership. They can even help you write a business plan. And they also tie in with the Small Business Administration for the particular area. And every county and really every city has either a chamber or a small branch of the Small Business Administration that are really advocates for small business success. I know when I was starting my small business, again, I had come out of industry. I thought I knew everything. You know, I'd been working in business development for a Fortune 50 company, both overseas. And all of a sudden, I found that there were a lot of things I really didn't know. You know, accounting wasn't my favorite subject. And yes, I knew about legal implications, but I went to a small business seminar, free, you know, and they had attorneys there that talked about liability and how you should protect yourself. And all of a sudden, by the time that event was over with, I had changed my ownership from sole proprietor to limited liability company, because I all of a sudden did not know that I was putting myself at a high risk of being sued. Now, that being sued from a standpoint of someone being injured over products that I was selling. Okay, so family businesses. You know, if you are a small business owner, then you've been part of a family business that has been passed down. And needless to say that probably your entire life, from 100 to 150% of your time, is dedicated toward success of your business, okay? And you are either selling a product or you're manufacturing, selling a product, or you're selling a service. Okay. Well, that's what I have to share with you today. I hope that I have enlightened you on some of the thoughts about small business ownership or entrepreneurship. Both are valuable to our economies. To me, they are a way that we as society can not only help ourselves, but we can bring ourselves out of some dark times, such as what we're experiencing now with COVID. We're talking about individuals that are the heartbeat of our economies and the future of our countries. So I thank you very much. And Joy, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Well, thank you for the absolutely fascinating session. I know I definitely learned a lot. I thought it was interesting, especially to learn that small businesses tend to have a little bit lower risk threshold. So I thought that was quite fascinating. Again, for those who have questions, feel free to put it in the chat or just jump in. But I wanted to kick off the question and answer session. You had mentioned about Austin and how it's attracting a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of businesses, or major businesses are kind of making their presence known in Austin. And I've always heard that Austin is a very, I guess, has this tech environment to it. So my first question to you is, why are we seeing some of these cities like Austin claiming that they are good for startups and entrepreneurs? Like, what are the conditions for a particular city that makes it more agreeable for startups?
Sure. And I'll share with you my observations from the Austin area. I've been here for 16 years. So I have seen Austin really take and put on a new face of where they want to be. I think you first have to start with the idea, and your city fathers and your commissioners and your planners, you look at your city and say, okay, where do we want to be in the next 5 to 10 years? Austin was really ideal for a lot of tech companies to come here. We have, again, the foundation at the University of Texas being they have a tremendous business school. And over with the support of their alumni, and alumni now become angel investors and they help with crowdfunding, they've set up an incubator that has really helped students make that transition. But what we also have from the tech side is the Googles, the Amazons, the Oracles, those types of tech companies that now are a pathway for students to come and work, okay, that have that entrepreneurial spirit. If you've never had an opportunity to go visit a Google site, please do that. It was phenomenal. I did that years ago and my jaw just absolutely dropped. And when you walk in and you see the excitement and what's going on with their employees that really encourage entrepreneurship, innovative and creative thinking. Of course, we have Apple here. All of the big names of the tech companies are present. And then when you have been able to entice companies and large people, entrepreneurs like Elon Musk he is going to hire 50,000 people to work at his facility, okay? 50,000. And I'm not saying all of that will be entrepreneurial, but when you look at what his plans are in terms of taking the technology in solar to the next level, of course, that is rich for entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs. He will hire individuals that will work for his company, but will have the entrepreneurial spirit. Okay. So I think it's a combination of the culture of your community. And of course, the interesting thing about Austin is the music. They call it the live music capital of the world. And we have had venues here, and I've attended some of those. South by Southwest is a phenomenal event that brings in not only music, brings in movie, it brings in educators. For the last several years, I've attended South by Southwest, the education side, and it is incredible of the things that you're hearing in terms of where education is going in the idea of entrepreneurship. Also, let me spin off and talk a little bit about entrepreneurship at our institutions, our colleges and universities. As the interest of entrepreneurship has increased, colleges and universities have responded and developed excellent entrepreneurship programs. Fort Hays is one that they started with a program where student could get a certificate in entrepreneurship with some additional coursework. You can get an undergraduate degree in entrepreneurship, and they have also extended their relationships with different companies. So companies that are entrepreneurial in their culture, where students could go and work and do an internship. Also, one of the other schools that I'm working with currently is building an entrepreneurship program for their undergraduates. And it's really an exciting time because all of a sudden they have heard their students and they know that there is a great demand for entrepreneurship courses. So I hope I answered you.
Yeah, thank you. And again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, ask away. You alluded to this before, about, you're talking about COVID and how we're possibly seeing maybe more people having that entrepreneur mindset. My question is that, and you talked about this, especially in the US, we are seeing that what they call the Great Resignation, where people are either leaving their jobs or maybe switching jobs. I mean, we're having a labor shortage, especially in the service industry and the hospitality industry and whatnot. So with that in mind, do you see with this Great Resignation, I mean, do you anticipate that more and more people are going to put that entrepreneurship cap on and, try their hand on that?
I do. I really do. I think that both avenues, small business ownership and entrepreneurship, are going to benefit from this new trend of I'm quitting, I'm resigning. Because even though individuals have looked at the impact of COVID, and many have looked at their life and reprioritized their life and are looking at different avenues. I mean, let's face it, if you are a parent and have a child and have a mortgage and a car payment, there's going to have to be some way of bringing income in. But entrepreneurship and small business ownership could be an avenue. And I think that both of these organizations are going to benefit from individuals that are looking for a significant change in their life. And I will say one more time, from an organizational development and behavior aspect, we're going to have to rewrite the book on OB because of all of these significant changes that have happened. And again, remote work is one. How we deal with a customer is another. How do we structure our organization, and how do we prepare for, heaven forbid, the next COVID or the next emergency? Because many companies did not have a contingency plan. It hit them so hard, and all of a sudden, the house is crumbling. And my son works in oil and gas, and they went through a tremendous change in focus and change. especially change in leadership, where before it was you're in the cubicle, you're being productive. This is my style of leadership. I'm monitoring you. Tomorrow you're working from home. I have no control over you. You know, that type of leadership, what we call the dominant type of leadership style, disappeared very quickly, because now corporate leaders and managers have got to trust the employees. There has to be dialogue. So I think there's a lot of goodness that came out of that. But again, from an organizational standpoint of looking at businesses, we're going to have to rewrite the book on organizational behavior development. You know,
That makes sense. And just kind of going along the line with COVID, in one way, I understand that small businesses, they might be a little bit nervous to take risk. They're, I guess my question is that to be more, I guess, flexible and agile in today's environment, doesn't it make sense for these businesses to incur a little bit more risk? Or, I mean, I don't know, especially with COVID and stuff. And it's unfortunate that we do see some small businesses, especially, they took a lot of loss, or, they had to shut their doors. So I guess what are maybe some of the lessons that small business owners can take from COVID? Is there something that they can prepare for in case something like this, heaven forbid this doesn't happen again, but say, or an economic downturn? What are some lessons that they can take to say,
sure.
survive?
Sure. There's something, again, going what I previously said in terms of contingency plans. Small businesses, especially restaurants that were family owned, or even franchises, they're the same thing, where they were not prepared for something like this. And I think from looking at it from a small business standpoint, the small business owner has really taken it on the chin because of COVID. They've learned so much of what they're able to do, how far down they can go to still keep the doors open. And then, of course, unfortunately, letting employees go, furloughing employees, that, again, we all know that employee salaries are the biggest cost drivers for organizations. But again, when you don't have customers coming through the door and they're not putting cash and paying for the bill with cash or plastic, then you're not making a profit. So I think from being a little more risk tolerant, or looking at risk and the what if, what am I going to do if this happens again? Or is there something else? I know that I was brought in on an organization, then they were doing very well. They were down in 6th Street, and all of a sudden there was a major water main break in their block. The city had to come in and shut the street off. They had to dig up their walkway and their entrance into their restaurant. And all of a sudden they're suffering because customers can't come in for lunch and dinner. Okay. They tried some other alternatives that didn't work. So their alternative was to move it out into the community with a food truck. Okay. Very creative, not going very far, trying to keep the identity still there. They moved to a parking lot that was right around the corner. Now, again, how would they know that the water main was going to break? So I think you're absolutely right. I think more small businesses now know or realize that they're going to have to manage some level of risk, not only day to day, but also in the future. And what would that really look like to maintain profitability, hopefully to grow a little bit? But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think COVID has really awakened something that many have never thought about, is how do I handle that situation? And if I'm very smart, what is the contingency? What is my contingency plan if something like this happens again? Okay.
That makes sense. We're actually getting some questions from the audience.
Okay.
Thank you for the questions. The first question is, what are some of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs in emerging markets compared to those that entrepreneurs face in the United States?
Emerging markets for an entrepreneur, the biggest challenge is to do the market research to make sure that what you're considering, either a product or a service, has a buyer. Okay. It goes back to the movie Build It and They Will Come, and that's a movie in the United States with Kevin Costner, and it's about a ball field and it really had some interesting dynamics. But in the past, when things were very good, entrepreneurs would produce a product or service, and the odds are that they could make it work because somewhere somebody was going to buy it. Over the years, we call that the loop of despair. Is when you're building the sequence of events, then somewhere after you have that product, you need to be testing the water to see if customers are really interested in your product or if you need to change before you really take on debt and try to produce something that there are no buyers for. It's interesting that when you look at why entrepreneurs fail, one of the biggest reasons is that there is no market for their product or service. And you would think, my goodness, that just doesn't seem right. But again, the mindset is that I have this idea, I know it's going to work, I am so committed to this thing, and all of a sudden, nobody's there. Nobody's buying. So yes, established markets, you have derivatives of products that can help you. For example, introducing a product, a service, a technology where you've done quite successful. And then with slight mods to that, you can continue your growth cycle by just having some very slight modifications. And, if, for example, if you are an Apple person, every couple of weeks, we have an upgrade to the Apple product that needs to be upgraded. So we're continuing to tie the customer to the product, but we're doing it in such that upgrades to services and products. Okay.
Thank you for that. So actually, we're getting a lot of questions coming in. I'm going to try to try my best to combine some of the questions.
Okay.
The couple of questions on COVID. Whether someone had asked whether it is wise to start a new business in this time frame. What are the risk factors that's there to kind of establish a stable business without really any loss, especially during COVID, and whether COVID has seen as this advantage or disadvantage for entrepreneurs or small businesses. Yeah, so try to combine questions on COVID.
Let me start with what I see as a great time for social entrepreneurship. As I mentioned, individuals or entrepreneurs are looking at this being an ideal time to launch a social entrepreneur to help a particular part of our society. Okay, so the timing for that is ideal because there is a big need. COVID in terms and post-COVID, we hope, has also given many an opportunity to say, this is the time. I want to be on the front edge of when our economies come back, okay? And of course, that's always risky because if you are looking at economy and you're saying, oh my gosh, we've had a high inflation rate, we're not quite sure where we're going. And I think that any time can be a good time to launch if you do your due diligence, if you look at yourself and say, okay, I have this product or I have this service, you've done your market research, you have the capital, I think any time could be a good one. But again, when you look at what happened during COVID, where there were no customers, we were all wearing masks, we were confined, restaurants were closing. Yep, that is a challenge. And are we really looking at another epidemic coming with this new variant? Don't know. But I think that, when you're passionate about an idea or passionate about serving society, I think any time could be a good one. But I think you really need to look at it from the standpoint of when you look at your business, you say, okay, internal factors, these are the things that I can control, okay? Things such as myself, I have this product, and then you start looking at external factors, those are things you can't control. I think that's always a good discussion about risk and risk management, okay?
Thank you for that. We have quite a few people who are based in India. And I think this might be related to the question on what are the differences in how to be an entrepreneur in an emerging market. So someone asked, what are your views on how to become successful and a successful entrepreneur in India? I'm guessing that what you said, that there needs to be some demand for whatever product or service that you're offering. Now, India, obviously is growing tremendously. The tech industry is, it's growing at a fast rate. So what are your thoughts on that? If you can shed any light on.
Sure. Where I think I can contribute to the question. It has been a number of years since I've been in India. I was there on a business venture sponsored, and at the time I was working for a company out of Virginia, and we came in and spent about a month in India and went to different cities looking for emerging markets. So let me back up and say, for many of you who are currently employed by a tech organization, and you have developed your skills, you know your product, you know where that product could possibly go. That is where many entrepreneurs start. Kind of like myself, I had a lot of experience, and I just woke up one day and said, I'm making all of this money for this company. I can do this myself. So I think when you look at the skill sets that come out of the tech industry, those that are today, those that are being worked on, and those that are going to be part of a portfolio for the future, I think that somewhere you will look at yourself and say, I have the skill sets to do this. So, and when entrepreneurs, those that have been entrepreneurial in their company and make that transition to be entrepreneurs, I think do very, very well, because they are mature, they know the industry, they know the market, they know the risk. Now it's just applying their technology and their understanding, their skills and their knowledge to a new market. Now, let me share with you something else. One of the things that got me really interested in small business and entrepreneurship is when I was working for my large company, there was a threshold that our company, contract-wise, in terms of amount, would not touch, because it was so low that for a large company, it was not profitable. And that threshold was about $4 million, okay? Anything at 4 million and below, now you're thinking 4 million, boy, I'd love to have a contract for $4 million. But for a very large company that had a worldwide presence, that was a Fortune 50 company, that had 300,000 people on the payroll, $4 million wasn't interesting. So that's where I spun off and I went, you know what? I can grab that $4 million. So that just gives you an idea that when you look at your markets and your technology, your companies may not be servicing the full gamut of the market share. And that's why that when you understand the market share of the products and where it's going, that is a great segue into saying, you know what, this is something that I think that I could do. I hope that helped a little bit.
Oh, I'm sure it makes sense. I know I'm just trying to be respectful of time. We have a lot of questions, but I'll just ask one more. In a lot of COVID-19 questions, but in regards to COVID-19, and we're kind of seeing this hybrid work environment. There are people who are going back to the office, but mainly it's still a virtual environment. What do leaders or entrepreneurs, or even say maybe small businesses who may have this work environment, what are, I guess, people need to, or leaders need to kind of keep in consideration to, I guess, maintain a successful remote / hybrid work environment?
Sure. I think, again, from a corporate leadership standpoint, COVID has forced a leadership culture or a leadership style significant change, okay? Where today, leaders, depending on the organization, starting right at the top, need to have a culture of trust, openness, communication, where in the past, I'm not quite sure. I mean, corporations that had great cultures were great to work for. I've worked for a couple, I just absolutely loved them. The dialogue was there. Everybody enjoyed working with one another. But again, COVID has really changed from a leadership and or management perspective. It's put us in a position where if for leaders who really understand the value of their employees, who are passionate about and are concerned about those individuals, I think we have this new style of leadership emerging where it's more about us. What can we do together? This is the value that you bring. This is how I will support you. So I think there is just even the conversations are totally different in terms of more about us, okay? Not about me as the leader and you as the employee. It is a team approach. I think there's another thing that we're seeing more and more in terms of teaming. I think those are the things that are really significant that have come out of a remote work environment, a hybrid work environment. I know, I'll share with you slightly, my son, oil and gas, big company, international company out of Houston. They had just acquired another company. They were going into a new office building, a 6-story office building. When COVID hit, all of that shut down. And then when they came back, there was only a need for 1 floor because the rest of the new way of managing and leading is encouraging remote work because people are happy. They generally happy, and studies are showing very productive. But again, that's leading to this idea of, oh, maybe I don't need to be working for corporate America anymore. Maybe I need to be doing my own thing. So,
right. So stressing more of this collaborative approach. That makes sense. Well, it's 5 minutes after. I can't thank you so much, Dr. Vengrouskie, for this insightful session. I hope everyone's learned a lot. And I really, really appreciate your time. I appreciate everyone for attending. Like I said, we'll be back next year for, better than ever. But thank you, everyone. And I don't know if I mentioned this session is definitely recorded, and we will provide the recording a few days after. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and happy holidays to all who are on the call and all who have listened to the call. And thank you.
Happy holidays to you too. Bye.